Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is SprinkleBeard. I am going to be your host for today. And today we are talking about Raid Shadow Legends. And specifically, we are going to be talking about the campaign battles. In this game, we can select a team of champions to represent us. So I'm going to turn this back down to normal. But we can select a team of champions for us to play through this content of the game. And we have battles that go on that are turn-based. And the strategy aspect of the game comes from certain things like this pyramid here. So here we have magic champions are strong against spirit. Spirit are strong against force. And force are strong against magic. Last but not least, we have void. Void has no inherent weaknesses or strengths against any of the other classes. This makes them a great offensive class and a decent defensive class because they don't have to worry about extra bonuses from magic attacking the spirit, where they might get extra accuracy or attack or crit rate when attacking into something, and the vice versa, that they don't have to worry about something being resisted or doing less damage or possibly doing a weak hit. As you travel through the campaign, there are 12 different missions for you to complete, each one having 7 levels, and each one awarding a certain type of gear set. So here in the 8th level, we have the, as I call it, the vampire set, but it's called the lifesteal set. And obviously the set is exactly what it sounds like, is that you heal by 30% of the damage dealt when your character attacks. Every character in this game has at least one attack. So that means that this set could be used on pretty much any character in the game. Obviously, certain characters take much greater advantage of that over than others. Now, when it comes to each boss, each of these bosses is a legendary in the game. Some of them have some of their abilities tweaked or made a little bit more fair, because certain things like Mashalad as the third boss would end up wiping parties if you didn't just burst him down right away. But we're going to talk about each of the bosses in quick detail and talk about a strategy for you as a new player and how to conquer them. Alright, so apparently I can't click into them the way I thought I could, so we'll just do this the hard way. The first boss of the game is Lord Chamfer. Lord Chamfer is an HP champion, so this means things like poisons and HP burns are going to be much more effective against somebody like him. It means that he is going to be designed to live longer and outlast your team. He does have a passive that restores every 2 turns, so this means when it's his turn, he will gain a shield that decreases your speed for when you attack him. However, this shield will not refresh until he gains 2 more turns from that original one. So if you're able to break through that shield, it means that it's easier. He's obviously weak to force champions, so that would be another easy way for you to take advantage of typing. He has things like an attack down and an accuracy down. An attack down would obviously reduce your damage dealing to him, and accuracy stops you from debuffing him. So between those and his speed down that he gets from you attacking his shield, his abilities are just designed to make your characters weaker while he just maintains his HP. Last but not least, he does have on his A1 a defensive down, meaning that he will start dealing more damage to you the longer the battle goes on. It is not escalating damage, it's just that he can break your defense and potentially start bursting down some of your characters if you're not prepared. He is not a considerably hard boss even on any of the difficulties, and the further you get into the game, the more options you have at characters that make him very easy to fight. When you first start playing the game, you might not have a lot of force champions, and that is okay. Feel free to use any magic champions, or for whatever reason you have a void champion, you could use void into him as well. You would just want to stay away from spirit champions when trying to face him. Next in the campaign, we have the Sewers of Arnok, which is guarded by Fushon of the Lizard. Fushon is also an attack type champion. He has an attacks at random 4 times. Each hit has a 50% chance to decrease your defense. He then has an attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 20% chance of placing a stun. Last but not least, he has attacks 1 enemy, has a 25% chance of placing an extra hit. He is one of the more older designed champions in the game, but he will feel very powerful the first time you fight him, and he is a force affinity, meaning your magic champions are going to have a harder time. When you first start playing the game, you are allowed to pick one of 4 magic champions that most players turn into their campaign farmer as they get further into the game. So it's a very good character for you to build up and to give some of your best gear to, because it's also a rare, which you won't have access to tons of rares at the beginning of the game. Fushon will still be easily toppled by these magic champions, but understand that you'll have a slightly harder time. But since you're probably going to be using this magic champion all the time, it's probably going to be out-leveling what Fushon does on normal. Next on our list would be Mashalad. Mashalad is an undead champion that they actually nerfed a little bit for the campaign. In his kit, he has the ability to increase the speed and crit damage of everybody on his team for 2 turns. In the campaign, he only does this to 1 champion. He then is supposed to place a True Fear and a Leech debuff on an enemy for 2 turns. On normal, he has 0 accuracy, so he rarely ever gets that second part off, and you almost never notice it. And because you start off with a magic champion, again, who often gets starts out leveling the content at the beginning of the game, makes him pretty easy work. However, Mashalad can do things like steal buffs and put on a continuous a block heal, as well as putting a continuous heal on himself. And then his main attack actually lets him heal himself whenever he deals damage. So by no means is he a pushover. However, your starter character should be able to make quick work of him. In stage 4, you end up fighting one of the dragons of the campaign. There is no way to view the dragon champions in this game, unfortunately. Each dragon has their own gimmick. Admittedly, upon making this video, I don't recall what this first dragon's gimmick is. I think he just poisons everybody on your team as he attacks. Next, as we get to Felwyn's Gate, you get to fight Warchief. Now, again, this is something that they made a little bit different because I believe he counterattacks, if I recall correctly, and in his kit, he actually does not have that ability. He reflects 60% of the damage taken back at the attacker. His defensing is increased by 15% for each dead ally, meaning that you want to try to target him, but he is force, so your starter character will have a more difficult time. Attacks 1 enemy, places a provoke debuff for 3 turns. Steals 2 random buffs from the target. This is another way that you have to just be very careful that if you try to overly buff your team, he has an easy way to kind of counter that or force somebody into attacking him, reflecting some of that damage back, and can be stealing buffs if you're not careful. Attacks 1 enemy 3 times. Has a 25% chance of placing a provoke. Damage inflicted is increased by his defense. This is a champion that I've seen certain players, when they first start playing the game, maybe on their very first day, they might not have access to enough of a variety of champions and might come across him and feel like he's kind of the first tough boss in the game where they're not able to easily topple him. And it's because they don't have a lot of spirit champions available to them yet. They may have not unlocked enough rare champions or the ability to gain rare champions yet. So he might be the first check for many players. Next, when we go to the Palace of Aravia, we get to see Queen Ava as the defending champion. She has an attack that attacks all enemies, increases their turn meter by 20%. Resets the cooldowns on each of this champion's skills if any target is killed. Has a 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. And then attacks one enemy. Has a 50% chance of placing a heal reduction. This is a champion, again, that your starter will have a very easy time dispatching, and the game feels a little bit better after you get past that last boss, and you'll feel like your main champion is putting in extra work, as a lot of the things you're fighting are of the spirit affinity, making it much easier for your magic champion to steamroll over everything. As we get to campaign 7 here, we get to fight Bigen. And yes, his name is Bigen. He has an attack that attacks all enemies 2 times, increases their turn meter by 25%. Has a 30% chance of placing a decreased speed on a debuff for 2 turns on any of the champions he hits. This is one of those things where he can feel very aggressive and oppressive if your team does not resist him or cannot kill him quickly enough. He can attack all enemies and has a 30% chance to stun enemies for 1 turn. And then also has a 50% chance of decreasing their attack. So not only will he outspeed you, but he's trying to take away your turns as you get them, or by decreasing your not your attack, your accuracy. So decreasing your speed and accuracy from your team. Attacks one enemy and then attacks all enemies 1 time if the first attack is critical. Next, we get to the Vladimir Strait, and this is where the game takes its first really, really strange change. And I don't recall if they did this on the original. I think this is something they did after the fact, that players were getting stuck against Bad Alcazar too frequently. Bad Alcazar is a very fascinating champion. So he's a force champion here, but in the campaign, he's actually a void champion. But all allies inflict 20% damage against targets under a poison. Removes all debuffs from all allies, and then places 2 continuous heal buffs on all allies for 2 turns. And then places 2 5% poison debuffs on all enemies for 2 turns. So a very big swing skill that he cleanses everybody on his team, and then puts a heal buff on them, and then diminishes your HP. Then he can attack all enemies and heals his champion and all allies by 20% of the damage inflicted. He has 2 poisoners that go alongside of him so that they help activate his passive, and the other 2 are force. So spirit champions will be your best bet here, and you might want to have a cleanser for your first time playing through it. It just depends on what champions you have available to you, because if you have the right spirit champions available, you can make quick work of him. When we get to levels 9 and 10, we have 2 more dragons that you get to fight. There's this dragon at 9. I believe he has a counterattack buff that refreshes every other turn that he gets. So he will counterattack the champions that he'll counterattack 1 champion that attacks him. And then we do level 10. That dragon puts a reflect damage buff on itself, or I think it has it as a passive, if I'm not mistaken. Meaning that as you attack him, you will reflect damage back onto yourself. So having a healer is going to be key for that boss. As we get to the Hallowed Halls, we get to fight Bistophis. And actually, to be honest with you, I don't remember where he is. I know who he is. I feel goofy because now that I think about that section is all about the Knight Reverence. Bistophis is another force champion that will be kind of the last big hurdle for most players that are really focused on letting their magic champions take advantage. Attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance to block active skills. So this would mean that if you got infected by this block active skills, you could not use your A2 or A3 ability for 2 turns or until this debuff is removed. Also has a 50% chance of placing a 60% defense break on all allies or on all targets. Attacks all enemies, inflicts a critical hit against targets under block active skills. Heals by 20% of the damage. Attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a block active skills debuff for 1 turn. So this champion is all about locking you out of your ability to do anything. Wow, he's got a massive attack stat that I was not aware of. Has a 35% chance of placing a true fear debuff for 1 turn under block active skills. Last but not least, you'll take on the demon faction. Before I have to click back and forth, we're just going to skip over. You get to fight the giant demon Mortu Macabre. Mortu Macabre has a passive that when he is damaged, he has a 20% chance to unlock a secret skill called Peril for 1 turn when attacked. Also has a 20% chance to fill this champion's turn meter by 25%. So if you're not able to dispatch him quickly, even though he is spirit, meaning that your champions should have an easier time against him, he does have a way to counterattack, which is Peril. Attacks 1 enemy 2 times, will ignore shield and block damage debuffs, as well as defense. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. This is one of the most amazing offensive skills. Although a lot of players do say that when they have Mortu Macabre, they are not able to have this skill be as impactful as they would like compared to the Boss Man. The Boss Man is obviously because the game, in order to not have to put on gear sets onto every single character, just increases their level, and then after they're plus 60, they gain things like more resistance, more accuracy, the further that you get up into the game. Attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 90% chance of placing a block buffs debuff for 2 turns. The block buffs debuff cannot be resisted if a target is under a heal reduction. Attacks 1 enemy and has a 60% chance of placing a 100% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. So his A1 has a way to activate his A2. It's just lucky that most of the time he'll be using his A2 much sooner rather than later. As you play through the campaign, each campaign level does have a faction that they are more heavily focused on, and does have certain rares that you can win that might be advantageous for you. In this video, we're not going to cover them because we already have another video discussing all the campaign rares that you can get and how good they are or how decent they are for a new player. Understand that when you first start playing this game, any rare champion that you get is going to be advantageous for you. So even if you ask the global chat or if you ask one of your friends, hey, is Sorceress any good? And they're like, no, Sorceress is trash, just feed her away. They are talking about in terms of, is it worth the effort to take this champion from a 3-star to a 4-star, 5-star, 6-star, fully ascend them, and then are they good then? And unfortunately, there are some champions that, no, they will not meet that. When you first start playing this game, though, things like Sorceress could be a very good champion for you, as they are a force champion, and that will allow you to conquer more concepts in the game, or have an easier time of fighting different bosses, depending on what you need. So there is a way for you to farm up champions of certain affinities that makes the game mildly more reliable, but it is not guaranteed, and some of these can be long and tedious. We recently on this account made a 6-star Death Knight account, where we had to take a common champion, Death Knight, who's in all the commercials for Raid, and make him our best champion. Upon playing with him, we had a lot of fun doing it, but we definitely ran into some issues along the way, and then we even had the difficulty that some of the champions that we were hoping to get ended up taking us a forever to grind out and finally get, and it felt terrible for the hours and hours of grinding and chatting with people to get that champion. However, once we finally did get that champion, things picked right back up and it wasn't too bad. I hope this helps. We're not going to cover every single rare, and I'm not going to show off every single rare that you can get because, again, we already have a video talking about that on this channel. But I hope that this information was helpful for you on your campaign drive. A lot of people will ask as well is what's the best way to gain the most experience in this game? Well, if you're trying to level up your champions, you first want to make sure that you have an experience banner going. This is not always easy to get, but at the beginning of the game, you usually get plenty of these that will help with experience. And the best experience in the game is through the campaign levels. Now, you would think that fighting the boss of each region is actually the best experience. It is technically not. Stage 6 is actually the best for experience. However, the silver you get from selling the boots is usually a lot less than the money that you get from selling the shield. So majority of players actually grind whatever stage -3 in order to get the most bang for buck, meaning that they are getting a lot of experience and a lot of silver, silver being the main currency in this game for everything. As you play through the game, you will have to determine how far you can get. Different players get different champions, so some player might tell you, hey, I had no problem farming 8-3 and was able to sit here and farm until I got Templar. But the truth of the matter is 8-3 has a lot of force champions in it, which is not great for your starter. So you might have a difficulty doing that. And you might say, well, I barely scraped through 8-3, but 9-3 has mostly spirit champions and void champions, which I found much easier to deal with. And I was able to grind much more until I was able to get War Maiden, who's touted as one of the best early game champions you can get in the game. I actually used her well up through mid game just because her kit was so good and did its job so consistently. The ultimate goal, though, as you play through each campaign, is to get up to 12-3. I'm not going to go in depth into the reasons as to why, but your ultimate goal will be get to 12-3, which is kind of touted as the best for experience. For silver is the shield level, so that also sells for a lot. And then also can get you 2 different champions that are rares, both of which, not necessarily I want to say usable, but both of which that you will get plenty of because it feels like their drop rate is much higher than the other rares. Or maybe it's just because this area is filled with so much experience in silver, it's easy to sit here and farm for a long time. Guys, that's it for our campaign coverage. I hope that is extensive enough for you guys. If you have any direct questions, leave them down in the comments below. Or if you'd like to interact with us, make sure to go to twitch.tv/SprinkleBeard. And we stream Monday through Saturday currently, about 10 or 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time till 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you guys like the video, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And if you really want to support us, feel free to come over to Twitch and subscribe over there. But until that next time, ta-ta.